Hey everyone, how's it going? I regretfully have barely made any videos on Generation 5, despite the fact I think it's one of the best in the entire series. And today we're going to do a fun challenge. You've seen me do this twice before, once in Crystal and once in Emerald. And today we're going to do the 0 EXP challenge in Pokemon Black. Now, the 0 EXP challenge is very simple, and funny enough, this is actually something you may have encountered yourself if you accidentally purchased a counterfeit Pokemon Black cartridge way back when. You see, if the game detected that you were playing an illegitimate copy of Pokemon Black, it would just disable your ability to gain experience points, and I'm sure it was believed that that would make the game impossible to complete, but of course, we love ourselves a challenge. We've already done this in 2 other generations, so what would it be like if we did, of course accidentally, play a version like this? Could we beat the game without gaining any experience points? There are still rare candies, and my rule on rare candies is we can use them, but we can't use abilities like Pickup to farm infinite rare candies. It's a really difficult challenge. It's a lot about thinking about which Pokemon are available on the next routes and using them to get by the next gym leaders. It can be really tough. But first, I'm genuinely really excited to talk about today's sponsor because this was a game I was planning to play, Persona 3 Reload. If you like Pokemon games but want something a bit of a step up in terms of difficulty, narrative, etc., the Persona games are perfect for that. And Persona 3 Reload, you don't have to have played any other Persona game. I've been meaning to play through the mainline Persona games for a while now, and turns out Persona 3 Reload is the perfect place to start. This series has everything you'd want out of an RPG. Great combat, a deep story, character development. It's a really great series, and Persona 3 is a really great game, which is why it's getting a stunning new remake available on pretty much every modern console. But don't worry if you're still using a PS4 or Xbox One, it's coming out for that. It's coming out for the Series X, PS5, Steam. So if this game interests you as much as it does me, please click the link below to pre-order Persona 3 Reload. It's going to be out February 2nd, 2024, and I really hope you enjoy, and honestly, let me know what you think about the game. I absolutely love talking about Atlas RPGs, and plan to give this game a thorough playthrough. But there's still some time before the game comes out, so let's get back to our crazy 0 EXP run. Now, like a lot of these 0 EXP challenges, which starter you pick doesn't matter too much because you're not going to use them very much at all. But since we did pick Tepig, we are going to face Cress. Now, we have a level 7 Lillipup, which you can catch on Route 2. And we're just going to use Leer, try to get the opposing Lillipup as low defense as possible. Next, we send out our Patrat at level 7, again, catchable on the early routes. But we're still extremely underleveled here. The goal with these Pokemon are to lower Patrat's defense as much as possible so that our, in big air quotes, stronger Pokemon can defeat it. That at least is the idea. And thankfully Lillipup is really doing what we want it to do for a while. So much so I even attack with Patrat and knock out over half of Lillipup's HP. But now we're going to go into Pansage. Pansage, I go for Vine Whip, I do outspeed, and that is 1 down. And part of why I picked Tepig is that Vine Whip is pretty decent, and if you pick Tepig, then Cress has Panpour, and we can use Pansage, which has a pretty good matchup against it. I wasn't sure how many Leers I should use. I decided to use 1 Leer and then just go for Vine Whip, and thankfully that was enough to defeat Cress on our very first try. That's pretty good because the first gym leader in these challenges can be absolutely brutal a lot of the time, since there are just so few Pokemon you're able to use and so few options, but Cress went relatively well, and that's 1 out of 8 down. The second gym leader is Lenora, a normal type gym leader who is also very tough, kind of like Whitney. She leads with the Herdier, and we start off with Woobat, available just off of Route 3 in Wellspring Cave. I'm going to be honest with you, there really wasn't a good reason to lead with Woobat, it was just a mistake, but that means we can eventually send out Sock, which is catchable outside of Pinwheel Forest at level 17, and Sock can tank Retaliate. It does have the sturdy ability, I made sure of that, and I should mention some of these Pokemon take a very long time to catch, but Sock was more than worth it. It's a little sad because I spent so much time going over what-if scenarios, and just rewinding a little bit, you can see I have a Roggenrola, a Blitzel, a Timple. I had all these plans for what would happen if I had to use them, but we're never going to use these Pokemon. I mean, we will for trainer battles that I don't really talk about in videos like this, but for the gym battle, it turned out Sawk was more than good enough, which is good for the challenge itself, but for the video, it is nice to show off all the different Pokemon, the way they synergize. I spend a long time trying to figure out which Pokemon to bring into each gym and to use in each area, and sometimes you'll see me use every single Pokemon in perfect harmony, and other times one Pokemon just really has an easy time. There are a ton of great Pokemon for Lenora just outside her gym, and Sawk was one of the best. So far, this challenge has gone really smoothly, although I spend a lot more time planning for the gym leaders than actually battling them. Berg comes out next and leads with Whirlipede. We have Darumaka available in the Desert Route, Route 4. And Darumaka has a hard time hitting because of the Hustle ability, but we get a really clutch flinch from Fire Fang, which is pretty rare. Less rare are misses due to the Hustle ability, which lowers my accuracy, but raises my physical attack power. But Darumaka is able to tank the Poison Tails and knock out Whirlipede, despite being 3 levels lower. Now, Dwebble is a terrible matchup, so we're going to go back into Sawk, one of the rare times a Pokemon will be used for 2 different gyms. Now, Sawk typically wouldn't be great against Bug-type Pokemon, but Dwebble is a Rock-type Pokemon, so we can use Sawk to tank its Rock-type attack, and just kind of use Double Kick and Low Sweep to knock it out. The final Pokemon is going to be a Leavanny, so Sawk won't really be too helpful there, but it did get rid of Dwebble. Now, I don't need Sawk, so I'm going to try and hit it with 1 Low Sweep, try and lower its speed. We get really lucky and survive on 1 HP, so we're able to lower that speed, and then we even get off a Double Kick, which was kind of silly. I probably should have lowered speed again, but that's alright. We did a little bit of damage. We go into Darumaka, and now the hope is we outspeed. We don't, though. That other Low Sweep would have been great, but Razor Leaf doesn't knock me out, and so once again, I have an entire team of Pokemon, which, to be fair, I am going to use, just not against the actual gym leader here. Darumaka was just so good, and once again, we have a situation where the game provides the best Pokemon for a gym leader just outside of the gym, in this case, just north of the gym, and so Berg from Castelia City was defeated. Where things start to get a little tougher is Elisa. Elisa leads with Emolga, and although we have access to the Desert Resort and stronger Pokemon like this level 22 Dwebble, it's not nearly good enough. It has the Eviolite equipped, which gives it 50% more special defense. That's not enough, however, and the Volt switching is just driving me absolutely crazy. You can see I have a level 25 Liepard. That's acquired from the route either east or west of the gym, and it has Fake Out to do a little bit of damage. Unfortunately, as fast as Liepard is, not faster than Emolga, but it gets even worse. Emolga has the Static ability, which can paralyze my Liepard or any Pokemon that deals contact damage, and Elisa has Hyper Potions. So things are really bad here. You can see I have a Sandile. I had a Sandile before, but this is a better, different Sandile. The last one had Moxie, this one has Intimidate, and yes, I do make sure I catch the perfect Pokemon with the ability I want, but you can see this is absolutely going terribly. In Relic Castle, you can get a Yamask, but I knew at this point the battle was lost, and I had to come up with a different strategy. But unlike in a lot of my runs, I can't just level up here. And although we have access to a ton of Pokemon, a lot of those are super low level much earlier in the game. This team of 6 are some of the strongest Pokemon you have access to, other than maybe something like Audino, which does very little damage. So when I run into a wall like I was here, I kind of have to think about whether I could use the Pokemon I have better, or whether there's a Pokemon I overlooked. But I spend a lot of time thinking about the perfect team, the perfect abilities, the perfect items for each and every trainer. And it just wasn't good enough here, at least not yet. Unfortunately, my second battle with Elisa didn't go all that much better. This time I tried to save Dwebble and go into Sandile. Not only would this nullify the Volt Switch, but because I used Smackdown, I could actually use Dig against Emolga and knock it out. Unfortunately, just because my Dwebble doesn't have enough special defense, that strategy would only work once, unless there would be some way to either immobilize or nullify the Emolga's Volt Switch, but I couldn't see it right now. What I did do is got it to switch into Zebstrika for the first time. Unfortunately, the Will-O-Wisp missed. That could have been pretty useful, as Flame Charge would have done only half, and we might have been able to actually beat the Zebstrika at that point. But because we got the 15% chance of a miss, we may not be able to beat Zebstrika at all. We can Fake Out and Thief, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. And just like last time, the Emolga absolutely destroys my team. You can see I have Toxic Spike's Trubbish, but because Emolgas are flying type, only Zebstrika would be affected by that. And in our second battle, we do better, but we still lose. So there are pieces here we could use to win, but we need to put them together a little bit better. In my third battle, I do exactly that. This time I decide to lead with Trubbish, and my reason is I'm going to set up Toxic Spikes right away. I'd like to set up 2 layers. Unfortunately, Trubbish just can't tank 2 attacks. And now we do the exact same thing we did in the first battle. We go into Dwebble, it goes for Volt Switch. Then we go for Smackdown. We smack down Emolga. And now we have to swap into Sandile because otherwise this Emolga would swap out. It won't swap out even though it is grounded now. Thus I can use Dig and knock out Emolga for 1 down. Emolga number 2 is going to go for Aerial Ace, but we can go into either Liepard or Dwebble. I go into Liepard here, so I'm going to use Fake Out, try to do just a little bit of damage. But more importantly, I'm going to force the Emolga to swap into Zebstrika. That is going to be poisoned. I can use Thief. The poison damage deals 1/8. And I wanted to use Torment. I don't have Prankster on this thing. That's a hidden ability which doesn't exist yet. The long and the short of it is we have Zebstrika at half HP, Sandile with Intimidate. I go for Dig. It goes for Flame Charge, which doesn't knock it out. We learned that from last time. After poison damage, Dig will knock out Zebstrika. And now all we have left is Emolga number 2. Unfortunately, Quick Attack is going to be enough to knock out Sandile. And now I have to go into Yamask. Yamask, I really, really want this Will-O-Wisp to hit. It goes for Pursuit, and the Will-O-Wisp does hit. That's an 8th every single turn. It decides to go for Volt Switch, which doesn't do as much to Yamask as I thought. Yamask is rather bulky. And although Elisa heals, we get a super clutch Hex critical hit. And that's going to pretty much do it until Elisa heals again. This time we don't get the critical hit. And I decide to swap into Leaveney here. It goes for Volt Switch. And the reason I decide to swap into Leaveney is because Emolga outspeeds everything and would one-shot Leaveney with Aerial Ace since I am Bug Grass. My strat here is to just stall. It's probably out of Hyper Potions and let the burn do the rest. So I'm going to switch between Dwebble and Leaveney. Leaveney will resist the Volt Switch, and then Dwebble will resist the Aerial Ace. And with the Hyper Potions exhausted, it is enough. It took 3 tries, it took all my Pokemon, but in the end, these are the battles I'm most proud of, where I had to use all the tools at my disposal, had to come up with an interesting strategy, and didn't have to rely on luck in order to win. Battles like these are just so satisfying, and it's part of the reason I love 0 EXP or level 100 challenges. It really forces me to think a little bit outside the box, use Pokemon, use strategies I normally would never consider. It's a ton of fun. And at this point, at least in terms of getting gym badges, we're halfway done. One other thing that's really good about Black and White specifically, by the way, is this is the first generation with reusable TMs. That's really nice because although the TMs aren't great to this point, the fact that I can use something like Dig on my Sandile and not have to worry at all about, oh no, I used it so early, who cares, you can use it as many times as possible. This opens up so many more options and just makes my team building a lot more interesting. Speaking of interesting team building, the 5th gym leader is the ground type gym leader Clay. He leads with Krokorok, and we have Ducklet, which we got from the Driftvale drawbridge. So it uses Swagger on Ducklet, which is really annoying. I'm going to try to use Feather Dance. Ducklet was supposed to be setting up here, but it's not doing a good job. However, the game has my back a little bit, We don't hit ourselves in confusion, and Bubble Beam actually with a critical hit is enough to knock out the Krokorok, so that's excellent. Excadrill comes out next, which is super scary. It outspeeds Slash, it's done. Now, in the cold storage area, in the Rustling Grass, you can get a Stoutland at level 23, which is really cool. Now, like we talked about with Infinite TMs, the Stoutland can learn Dig, and we're going to try to damage the Excadrill, which is going for Hone Claws and is going to deal a huge amount of damage now if it hits. It goes for Slash, and it does over half. I went for Workup, that was a little greedy, and my Stoutland is no more. Next comes out Deerling, Grass Normal type. It has Leech Seed, but unfortunately, Rock Slide's enough to knock that out. My highest level Pokemon is sadly a level 29 Foongus. It goes for Bulldoze and just bulldozes over Foongus. Chinchino can also be acquired through Rustling Grass, but it is no match for Excadrill. And finally, Leaveney from the last gym makes a return appearance, but it is no match for Excadrill. And so, as some would say, the difficulty curve is difficulty curving, and the last few gyms have definitely been quite a step up from the previous two. This is kind of fun, but I think we can get this. After one more failed attempt, I adjust my strategy a little bit. I'm still going to lead with Ducklet, that proved pretty good, and rather than waste my time setting up, I realized that 2 Bubble Beams will knock out Krokorok, so just go for that. I wish I had Surf. It goes for Torment, and although I hit myself in Confusion once, I then, after getting hit by Crunch, hit with Aerial Ace, and due to Swagger, knock out Krokorok. Excadrill is out next, and ideally we got a Miss and then a Feather Dance, but that doesn't happen. That's okay. Stoutland has Intimidate, we made sure of that, and now I'm actually going to swap Pokemon into Deerling. This is important because it's going to go for Hone Claws here and cannot one-shot Deerling. Next, I'm going to go for Leech Seed. It went for a second Hone Claw, so now it's +1 in attack, but every turn I'm going to take away an 1/8 of its HP. It goes for Rock Slide, and it's now enough to knock out Deerling. I was going to go for Jump Kick. So Stoutland, it's time to Intimidate. So now it's neutral. It goes for Hone Claws. I go for Workup, and then I'm going to go for Dig, and I'm hoping that's enough with Leech Seed to knock this out, but we'll see. Goes for Slash, no crit. I go for Dig. Unfortunately, the AI doesn't realize that Bulldoze would hit me underground. That's a bit of an oversight, but I'll take it. We do knock out Excadrill, and we're at 45 HP. The final Pokemon is Palpitoad. I go for Retaliate, not because a Pokemon of mine just fainted, but because it's the strongest normal move Stoutland has, and after just 2 Retaliates, since I am at +1 in attack, I knock out Palpitoad. I did have my Foongus, just in case, that's what it was for, but at the end of the day, Stoutland, despite the fact it was low leveled, it was a fully evolved Pokemon, and it did a great job versus Clay. So 3 tries versus Elisa, 3 tries versus Clay. But you know what? We got 5 gym badges. That's pretty okay. Anyway, the 6th gym badge is Skyla, a flying type. And it's at this point a lot more the game's going to open up, like Chargestone Cave. A lot more routes, a lot more options. Too many options. It takes me so long. I don't think you guys understand. There's like 3 or 4 hours between each gym. Just because it is hard to find some of these Pokemon, like Stoutland, it takes a really long time, but it is totally worth it. Unfortunately, in a video like this, it's hard other than just to tell you, to show you how much prep time there is between each gym, but the fact that the gyms are going as well as they are is a testament to the fact that I am preparing, even though I haven't done damage calculations or even really looked up much before I started the run. Once I get to a route, I look up what Pokemon are in it and try to plan the best team. Sure, it's on the fly, but so far it's working pretty nicely. The most prep time, though, between gyms to this point was before Skyla, and it paid off big time. We got an Emolga at level 30. The way you get this Emolga is by trading a Bulldor, and it doesn't matter what level the Bulldor is. Emolga has acrobatics, so I'm not even using electric moves until the Unfezant comes up, and it tries to go for Razor Wind, but Shockwave knocks it out, and now out comes Swanna. We don't outspeed, Bubble Beam knocks me out, but we also get a Zebstrika. That's just a standard encounter on Route 7. Outspeeds, Spark, easy victory. Now, one thing I do want to talk about with regards to Zebstrika is that Black and White, there's some mechanics that I learned that I didn't know beforehand. So what I did know is that there is light grass and dark grass, and in the dark grass you can get double battles, which is kind of cool. You also get higher level Pokemon, which I did know. What I didn't know is that the catch rate in the dark grass is far, far lower, contributing to the frustration I have, because you're always going to want the highest level Pokemon possible. It makes a huge difference. And so a level 33 Zebstrika was only available in the dark grass in Route 7, but it made a huge difference, and Skyla was pretty easy, even though it took about 5 in-game hours to do all the things I needed to do to get to that point. And the trainers at this point are getting more and more difficult, so in addition to building a team to beat each gym leader, I need a team that can beat random trainers with all sorts of Pokemon. The next gym leader is Bryson, and we go from the most prep time to the least. Beartic is available in the winter outside of Dragon Spiral Tower, and because of all the TMs we have at this point, Beartic just completely decimates Bryson's team. Although we can swap to Vanillish just because I kind of wanted to use... I spent all this time getting all these Pokemon. I was so proud of myself, but Beartic is Ice-type that learns a fighting move. So, although Vanillish has Flash Cannon, another TM I've acquired, and that's really cool, you don't really need to use it. If it didn't use Acid Armor, we probably just would have stuck with Beartic. And we do knock out Vanillish with our Vanillish, that's pretty cool. Now out comes their Beartic, and that means we can go for Flash Cannon, which does like nothing. Another Pokemon you can get outside of Dragon Spiral Tower is Mienfoo. Jump Kick does a lot, and then Swagger misses, which is nice. I go for Drain Punch, knock out the Beartic, and next comes out the Cryogonal. So even though I had Beartic to destroy Bryson, Mienfoo, a pre-evolved Pokemon, was able to do it as well. There are just so many decently leveled Pokemon outside this gym, and that's really, in these challenges, what it comes down to. The toughest gyms are when there are very few Pokemon at decent level outside the gym, but since it is winter time and there's that dark grass just above what you can see right here, if I walk up that hill, that's where that patch of grass is, I was able to get some really, really good Pokemon. Pokemon that we might even want to use against Drayden because, well, Vanillish and Beartic are ice Pokemon. The final gym leader is a Dragon-type gym leader. But before we get to him, there was a battle versus Bianca that took me like 12 attempts. I'm not kidding. In the end, this is a strategy I ended up having to use. I lead with Ferroseed because this Stoutland was so obnoxious, and you can see I'm using Poison Jab. I'm trying to poison it and then use Iron Defense so that the Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet, in addition to the poison, knock this thing out, which is exactly what happened. So that was how I got rid of Stoutland. The next came out Simpor, and I knew it was coming out because, again, 12 battles. So I went for Zebstrika and tried to get Spark to paralyze. It didn't, but thankfully Skull didn't burn, and we knocked it out on our next hit. Serperior comes out next and knocks out Zebstrika. And this is typically where everything would go badly, because this Serperior is really good. It goes for Coil, Vanillish goes for Ice Beam. Everything looks good, right? But it one-shots, although with a crit, but it one-shots Vanillish. It actually nearly one-shots Beartic to show that the crit really didn't matter. But funny enough, it's this Musharna, of all things, that ended up being the biggest problem, because it is bulky as anything. And so what I had to do is go for Basculin, and then just really hope that Crunch could two-shot it. Otherwise, it would just stall me until I lost, and that happened time and again. Most of the other rival battles were all easy first try victories, but this Bianca battle, it seems like it might be a good sense of things to come versus the Elite Four and beyond, because we're gonna stop being able to catch Pokemon super close in level to the Pokemon we're gonna be facing, and especially with the Elite Four, it's not like we can get a separate team for each member, although they only use 4 Pokemon in the initial battle. But things are really starting to get tough here. No one gave Drayden that memo though, because Drayden was pretty easy. Beartic even misses with Icicle Crash the first time, but doesn't the second. It doesn't even knock out Fracture, but thankfully Drayden uses a Hyper Potion, and the second Icicle Crash does knock it out. Draudigan is pretty bulky, but Icicle Crash doesn't deal contact damage and it can flinch, which it does. We knock out. And then Haxorus comes out. We go for Icicle Crash. We actually outspeed because Dragon Tail is negative priority. And of course, it Dragon Tails in Vanillish, which goes for Ice Beam, knocks out Haxorus. And one thing I didn't really notice until this challenge is that all the gym leaders in Black and White all have around 3 Pokemon. I'm really interested to see this challenge in Black 2, White 2, even though it's a completely different set of Pokemon and different routes and everything. But one thing that's important is that at some level this doesn't really work, but when you're around the same level, having 2 Pokemon of yours for 1 Pokemon of theirs, that means I only have to do 50% damage for one of my Pokemon to be useful. And in this case, I actually only needed 2 Pokemon. In fact, had Dragon Tail not swapped me out, I would have only needed 1 Pokemon. So it is a bit of a strange thing. I'm not really sure why Black and White did that, but it was rectified at least in challenge mode of Black 2, White 2, which is pretty cool. Anyway, speaking of challenging things, the most challenging part of any of these runs are the Elite Four. Like we discussed, they only have 4 Pokemon each, but one thing that makes it kind of interesting is they can be battled in any order. I don't think that's really going to make too much of a difference, but it's definitely something that's interesting. At this point, pretty much the entire game, minus the post-game areas of course, are open to me, and there's some pretty cool high-level Pokemon I'm going to be able to get. And since we are battling 4 Elite Four members in a row, we'll be able to show off some pretty cool Pokemon that you may not expect me to use, and some you probably do, but we're pretty much going to have to retire this entire team we've been using to this point. And you know what? Rather than talk on and on about what I'm going to do, let me just show you what I ended up doing. After 8 in-game hours of prep, I finally was ready to face Marshall, the fighting type Elite Four member. Swoobat was the first Pokemon I used, and if you wonder, J-Rose, how do you have a Swoobat? Simple, you catch a Woobat, give it a whole bunch of vitamins and massages and stuff, and then use a rare candy and bam, Swoobat. Fortunately, it didn't do all that much to throw. Another Pokemon you might be wondering is the Basculin, and I used a Master Ball on it. Now this Basculin was actually a special attacking set, and that means I could use Surf. How you get this Basculin is actually kind of interesting. There's Rippling Water, which can go up to level 50, and of course I ended up getting the level 50, which is part of why this took so long, but it's totally worth it because this thing actually out-levels some of the Elite Four Pokemon and is completely wrecking most of Marshall's team. Hammer Arm by Conkeldurr puts an end to that, and now we go into Durant, also available in Victory Road. It's best not to use a Hustle set, because even though I'm doing less damage, I don't have to worry about this Iron Head missing, and we even got a couple flinches, which is kind of nice. It goes for Hammer Arm, lowers its own speed, and with the Rocky Helmet, that's right, I'm equipping items, there's some useful ones, it knocks itself out. Mienshao's at level 50, it goes for Retaliate, and it's going to get damaged by Rocky Helmet. Now we have Sock, we have Excadrill, and Dino. I go into Sock, which does have Sturdy. Thankfully, the Sock is slightly higher level than the first one we got at level 41. We may have gone a little lucky here. Retaliate doubles in power after one of your Pokemon faints, and that crit may have mattered, but that is a first try victory versus Marshall. Next, I chose to battle Caitlyn, the Psychic-type Elite Four member, who leads with Reuniclus. Unfortunately, Dino evolves super late, so we have a level 40 Dino as our Dark Pokemon, which isn't ideal. It goes for Focus Blast, which is going to one-shot Dino, and yeah, that didn't prove to be very effective at all. And the next best thing we have is Durant. Durant has Crunch and Bug Bite. I decided to go for Bug Bite, and I outspeed. Reuniclus isn't very fast, but unfortunately, we don't do half. It is fairly bulky, and Focus Blast is enough to knock out the Durant. Basculin comes out next. Remember, special attacking Basculin, but it gets a crit with Surf. By the way, it's special attacking Basculin just because its stats happen to be terrible in attack and great in special attack. Normally, you'd use a physical attacking set, but what you also would normally want is for Gothitelle not to get a critical hit Thunderbolt. I can send an Excadrill here. I don't know if Gothitelle can do anything, I go for Sandstorm. I outspeed anyway, but this will allow me to outspeed a lot of the other Pokemon. And then I go for Swords Dance. Maybe I'll be able to sweep here, actually. Gothitelle goes for Psychic. Now I have to just go. I use Earthquake. That's one down. I do have the Smooth Rock, so this should last the amount of turns I need it to. Unfortunately, I miss with Rock Slide, and that's probably going to be GG. All I have are Swoobat and Sock. Swoobat doesn't have Simple, so it's only +1 in special defense, and Air Slash does nothing, although we get a flinch, that's kind of nice. And then we get another flinch, that's kind of nice, but unfortunately, Full Restore here will basically nullify that. Another Air Slash, a miss, and now all we have left is Sock. And even though we can knock out Sigilyph with Retaliate, the final Pokemon, Musharna, is Psychic type. I really don't have anything good. Retaliate does nothing, and that's GG. I have decided to save between Elite Four members here. For ultra difficult challenges like this, I usually allow myself to save between because we're going to need some good luck. I mean, look how bad the Pokemon we're using are. So it's going to be a matter of trying again and again until we can find the perfect strategy. Although theoretically, I could come back and battle them all again and do it in one go if I really want to see if it's truly consistent. Well, in the very next battle, I decided to change up my strategy. I don't want to lead with Dino, I'm going to lead with Durant, and we're still going to go for Bug Bite. We're going to hope for a Focus Blast miss, and it ends up going for Thunder, which misses, which is pretty good. Bug Bite's going to be a 3 KO. We're probably going to get a heal here. Another miss. Okay, that's really good. There is the Full Restore, and so now we can get hit by one of them as long as we don't get paralyzed or it's not a critical hit. Thunder does hit. It's not... Oh, crits. There we go. Well, that sucks. What do I do here? That's so unfortunate. Okay, Basculin. I'm going to go for Surf, and that's... Oh, it goes for Full Restore. That's unideal, because now it's just going to go... Oh, actually, that did way more than I thought it was going to do. Now I can go into Excadrill, though, because it's going to go for Thunder. Oh, it went for Energy Ball. Didn't see that coming. Beautiful. All right, well, this is not what I wanted to have happen. I wanted to set up here. Now I'm going to have to swap in the Basculin because I'm anticipating an Ice Beam, which I get. And of course, Basculin is frozen, which is why I taught Scald, just in case, but Psychic knocks me out. So who cares? Now I can go for Retaliate. Did pretty good damage last time. In fact, Air Slash misses. Retaliate, though, does next to nothing. And Air Slash won't KO because I have Sturdy. Poison Jab could potentially poison. It doesn't. And so we just get knocked out by Air Slash. Now I have to decide what I want to do next here. I don't have anything great, so I go for Swoobat. Swoobat, I can use Calm Mind. We know it's going to go for Ice Beam here, and it does hit. Thankfully, it doesn't freeze. We go for Air Slash, knock out Sigilyph, but this is not looking good. Gothitelle has Frisk. I have Amulet Coin on this because it doesn't really matter what I use on this thing. Shadow Ball knocks out Swoobat. Alright, so we have Dino and we have Excadrill. Gothitelle doesn't actually have anything great against Dino. The best move it has is either Shadow Ball or Thunderbolt. So I'm going to probably be able to knock it out with that defense drop. Most definitely going to be able to knock it out. So Dino, it has Eviolite on it, but pretty useful here. Now out comes Musharna. Musharna has Shadow Ball, so like the Gothitelle, doesn't have anything great for Dino, and Eviolite just makes it so bulky, relatively speaking. This actually might result in a victory. I'm very surprised. It goes for Charge Beam. Hopefully it doesn't get... it did get the boost. That's unfortunate, but it's very low in HP, and it's not going to heal, I don't believe. Thankfully, even though it's clearly levitating, it doesn't have Levitate. And Earthquake knocks out Caitlyn. Second try victory. Let's go. The third Elite Four member I decided to face was Grimsley. He is the Dark type trainer, and he leads with Scrafty, Dark Fighting. I lead with Sock, Pure Fighting. I go for Bulk Up, raises my attack and defense. And it goes for Sand Attack, which is pretty annoying actually. Lowers my accuracy. I decide to go for Brick Break, and of course it avoids. It goes for Brick Break, doesn't avoid. I get another avoid. Sand Attack, and will I actually be able to hit this thing? Nope. Nope, we have not hit this thing a single time. Finally, we do, and we can see how much damage we do with one Bulk Up. It's actually quite a bit, but a critical hit knocks me out. and Scrafty does have Moxie. So I'm not going to take any chances here. I know Basculin will outspeed, and so I can just go for Surf. Unfortunately, I forgot about Full Restore. Hopefully this does over half, and it does just over half. That means I'm going to knock out Scrafty. That's one down. Next comes out Crocodile. Crocodile shouldn't outspeed Basculin. It does, actually. I'm surprised by that. I think this Basculin had pretty bad stats, but it's so hard to find a level 50. I used a Master Ball. Anyway, we do knock it out, but we're weak. Bisharp comes out next. We do outspeed that. We don't one-shot, though, and Night Slash is going to knock me out. Now I go for Excadrill, and as long as I outspeed everything else, we could be good. I go for Sandstorm, anticipating the heal. Now we're definitely going to outspeed due to Sand Rush. And I'm going to go for Swords Dance. A little bit greedy here. It goes for Night Slash. That does barely anything. And I go for Earthquake. Thankfully, it doesn't have Sucker Punch, or at least doesn't use it. Knocks it out, and then finally Liepard comes out. It has Fake Out, which it uses, but I do outspeed due to the Sandstorm, and with the Swords Dance, we knock out the Liepard, and Grimsley proved to be, so far, the easiest Elite Four member. That leaves just one Elite Four member left, the Ghost-type trainer Chantal. We don't have an amazing team for Chantal, but we don't have a terrible team either. Alright, so Chantal leads with Cofagrigus, and we lead again with Dino. So Crunch isn't going to do much after Will-O-Wisp, but you know what? Not terrible considering I was burned there. Would have done about half. We get a defense drop, which doesn't really help. Shadow Ball, though, doesn't do all that much to me, and I go for Dragon Pulse. That's not affected by Hustle, and you can see it barely does anything. Cofagrigus is pretty bulky. I'm level 40, and I'm a Dino, or Dano. I've always said Dino, but who cares? Alright, next we're going to send out... Gotta think about this for a second. Let's go into Durant, because we did get that defense drop, and we can use Crunch, and that does knock it out, although maybe the critical hit mattered, and you can see there, we do have Swarm. Chandelure comes out next. Hopefully we outspeed, but we don't, and Fire Blast is going to absolutely obliterate Durant. Basculin should be able to pick up the pieces with Surf. I go for it, and Chandelure is no more. So we only have 2 more Pokemon left, but Jellicent, I don't think it has Water Absorb, but it's not going to be a good matchup for Basculin. So I go into Swoobat, which isn't super useful. It goes for Energy Ball, which I was anticipating. Critical hit kind of sucks. I just go for Air Slash, try and do some damage. It does basically nothing, and Surf knocks me out. Unfortunately, none of these Pokemon have a great matchup against Jellicent. I will go for Excadrill. Now, I'm gonna hope I outspeed. I go for Earthquake, and it actually does pretty decent, but unfortunately, the Cursed Body, which is its actual ability, disables it. Not that it mattered, because I got knocked out anyway. Now I have to decide whether I think Surf will knock it out, or whether we slowly want to knock it out with Poison Jab. I opt for Poison Jab, and I get the poison. It goes for Surf. I survived due to Sturdy, and the crit really did matter there. But unfortunately, Chantal does have a full restore, and we're definitely not going to win this battle. Basculin does some decent damage, but not nearly enough, and we lose in our first battle. So like I said, not a great team for Chantal, but maybe we could make it a little bit better. The second battle is going to start off much like the first, where I go for Dino and try to get the drop, but this time it doesn't Will-O-Wisp right away. It in fact goes for Shadow Ball, which is pretty good because it's going to go for Shadow Ball again. I no longer have Hustle, so I'm going to do less damage, but I get a really clutch critical hit. Unfortunately, that means Chantal is going to full restore. I get another Crunch off, it goes for Shadow Ball, so the end result is pretty much just using a full restore. Basculin, I'm going to go for Surf, and the Cofagrigus decides to Will-O-Wisp, which is annoying, but thankfully, I'm not a physical attacking set. What's probably more annoying is that Chantal heals again, and Burn does do 1/8, not 1/16 as it does in modern Pokemon, but so far so good. We have 90 HP, and it swaps into Jellicent. You can see that in these games, what the opponent swaps into is based on what you have, and I anticipate Energy Ball, so Durant was a pretty good swap, and unfortunately I get a special defense drop, so I have to go into Sock, which is pretty useless against Chantal. I'm just going to go for Poison Jab, try to get a poison, I don't get it, and it knocks me out. Now Durant can go for Crunch, and I don't have to worry as much about my special defense. I get Curse Bodied, which sucks, and then Surf. and it gets knocked out really quickly, so I guess the special defense drop didn't matter. But remember last time Earthquake did about half? Well, I'm gonna have to hope that happens here, and it does. So next comes out Chandelure, and it's a question whether we outspeed. We don't. That really sucks, but the next two Pokemon are weak to Basculin. If Basculin can one-shot, we got this. We go for Surf against Chandelure, and it does one-shot, and next comes out Golurk. Golurk isn't super bulky, well, has a lot of HP, but not great special defense, and so we are in fact able to one-shot it, and that is all 4 of the Elite Four, just using Pokemon we caught pretty much in Victory Road, which explains why my type diversity isn't great. And while the Elite Four weren't so bad, the next 2 battles are pretty brutal, and Getsus, because both those battles we have not just 4 Pokemon to face, but 6, meaning we no longer can just 2v1 most of these Pokemon. Like Dino barely did anything, it just wasted some full restores. We can't afford to have strategies like that, and hopefully this goes well, but I have a feeling this is going to take a very, very long time. Before I get to the battle, I did forget to mention one kind of important rule for these challenges for me. No legendary Pokemon whatsoever. None. Not even the Zekrom/Reshiram you're supposed to use. I refuse to use them. It makes these challenges really, really easy. Typically, you can get super high-level legendary Pokemon. I want to use just regular Pokemon and see if it's possible. If nothing else, it differentiates this challenge from many others that have already been done. Since most people don't have really any qualms about using legendary Pokemon, I just personally never like to do so. Having said all that, let's go battle N for the final time. Well, probably not, but you get what I mean. N leads with Zekrom. See, N doesn't mind using legendary Pokemon, and we lead with Dino, which, you know, there's a bit of a mismatch. It goes for Fusion Bolt, and I tank it pretty well. I go for Dragon Pulse, which does next to nothing. And it goes for Fusion Bolt again, knocking out my Dino. Again, I was just kind of curious what it would do, and just wanted to test things out. Excadrill comes out next. It does have the advantage of type. It goes for Light Screen, which is really useful, so we can go for Sandstorm and boost our speed, as well as deal a little bit of damage to Zekrom, 1/16 every turn. Now I am going to go for Swords Dance because I don't think this thing has anything that can one-shot me. It uses Giga Impact, which only does half my HP, and that's great because since Giga Impact requires a recharge turn like Hyper Beam, then I can get another Swords Dance off, go for Earthquake, and that is not just Zekrom down, but maybe I could sweep through the whole team. Klinklang seems like a really bad decision, but don't worry, it's not Klinklang, it's Zoroark, and I do one-shot it. Here is where things go a little awry. Caracosta has Aqua Jet, and even if it didn't, it has Sturdy, and it's unaffected by Sandstorm, or at least it's undamaged by Sandstorm. I'm going to go for Surf, and this could actually take it down to Sturdy. It doesn't. It goes for Stone Edge, which does a lot, but thankfully, I'm able to tank it and knock it out with Scald. So far, so good, but long way to go. Klinklang, I hoped to outspeed it, but unfortunately, my Basculin had a negative speed nature, and I'm unable to, so it knocks me out with Thunderbolt. Now it goes for Metal Sound, which lowers my special defense, which doesn't matter because I have Sturdy. I go for Brick Break, and unfortunately, it's not going to be a 2-shot, but then it goes for Hyper Beam, which is going to take me down to Sturdy, but N is going to be unable to heal, so I can actually knock out Klinklang. And we only have a couple more Pokemon left, including Vanillux, but unfortunately, we're at 1 HP, so although this is a good matchup, Vanillux is going to get the final laugh, but Durant is also a really good matchup. Here, we're going to go for Iron Head, it goes for Hail, and Vanillux has decent defenses, so it's only going to do about half. With Ice Body, it actually restores some HP. It goes for Frost Breath, which is always going to crit, and yeah, that's not very good. Unfortunately, Ice Body did make the difference there, and thus N is able to heal with full restore. Once again, Ice Body is probably going to prevent this from being a 2-hit KO, and it goes for Blizzard anyway, knocks me out. I only have one more Pokemon to go, and that Pokemon is Swoobat. Not a great matchup versus Vanillux. My only hope is pray for a miss and Calm Mind a little bit, but after I Calm Mind and I do outspeed, Blizzard still one-shots, albeit maybe due to the critical hit, probably not. But one interesting thing about Black and White, when you lose this fight, you don't have to battle the Elite Four again. You can take the loss if you want to, and just go right back up to N's castle and battle N again. That makes definitely this part a little bit easier than the typical champion battle, but it's still not going to be easy for us. I battled N over and over again, but I was unable to beat him until I changed up my strategy pretty significantly from what you saw. And reusable TMs are definitely going to play a role in how I was able to beat N. I'll show you. So Excadrill, not only is it going to lead, it's going to go for Swords Dance because I want to use Sandstorm on the last possible turn. If I do so, I get more Swords Dance, and you can see I have Rocky Helmet just to deal a little bit more damage. So it goes for Giga Impact, which is super great. It's going to knock out my substitute, but I'm able to use a Sandstorm, go back behind a substitute, and because of Sandstorm, I'm able to outspeed and knock out the Zekrom. Next comes out Zoroark, we're going to knock it out. And now Caracosta goes for Aqua Jet, but instead of knocking out Excadrill, I take it down to Sturdy. It would be nice if I had something like Spikes or whatever, but I am going to be able to bait out a full restore. I take it again down to Sturdy, and Excadrill will knock out Caracosta because of the Rocky Helmet I have equipped. So it took out 3 Pokemon on its own. Next comes out Sock because Vanillux is going to come out here. Retaliate is tempting, but we're going to go for Brick Break. Hopefully we can just do a little bit more damage. This might be a 2-hit KO. It goes for Blizzard, and because Hail chipped away a little bit of my health, I don't have Sturdy, and Vanillux knocks me out. Now I go into Durant. Durant doesn't have great special defense, but it is probably going to be able to tank a Blizzard, barely, and Iron Head is just enough to knock out Vanillux. Next comes out Archeops, and this is the Pokemon I was completely unable to beat, but we do have Quick Claw equipped to Durant, and Archeops has half attack when it's below 50% HP, and that means even though it's going to outspeed Basculin, by the way, even if it didn't, I'd Aqua Jet, I left and went to the Move Tutor because, like I said, you can just go and come back. Something very weird that doesn't usually happen for the champion battle. I guess N technically isn't the champion, Getsis is. But in both these battles, we're able to completely rearrange our team if we want to. It's kind of a unique thing to do, but considering how tough these battles are, it makes sense. But we are going to win. I go into Dino. All the full restores are gone. It goes for Metal Sound. I go for Crunch. Unfortunately, it doesn't do enough to knock out Klinklang, so Swoobat has to come out. I meant to just finish it off with Psychic, but of course I misclick, and yet I still get the win. Lucky stuff here, but N isn't even the final boss. Getsis is, who has a really tough team, and although we can redo moves and find new strategies, this battle might take me even longer than N, and unsurprisingly is very likely to be the hardest battle in the whole game. In this battle, I keep my team exactly the same, although probably don't want Excadrill versus Cofagrigus, but maybe we do. The substitute strategy is pretty interesting because if we can tank a Shadow Ball, which we cannot, then in theory we might be able to sit up Earthquakes and sweep through the whole team, which is what I wanted to do versus N. Unfortunately, that's just not what happens here, and although we do a lot of damage to Cofagrigus, it knocks out Excadrill. Dino comes out, but just like versus Chantal, it's really not able to do all that much until it actually gets a critical hit, which is super lucky, and knocks out Cofagrigus. But right now, I'm down 1 Pokemon, and now I'm down 2 Pokemon after that Dragon Pulse from the Hydreigon. Sock is super effective, but it's going to be slower. Dragon Pulse, this is a really good special attacking Pokemon. Doesn't knock it down to Sturdy, actually, which is pretty lucky. A critical hit, though, doesn't kill Hydreigon, and it knocks out Sock. I can go for Aqua Jet and knock out Hydreigon, so I thought. Didn't even do enough to knock it out. So Basculin faints, and it has Fire Blast for Durant, but it misses. Electros, which has no weaknesses, comes out next. And Electros also has Flamethrower, which is really good. It doesn't even bother with an electric attack. It just goes for Crunch against Swoobat. And yeah, that went about as well as I thought it would. But I had a plan that might make Getsis a lot easier. Unfortunately, it's the worst thing. I've done this before, and it involves Pawniard of all things. because when you have Pawniard plus Stoutland, the AI will always use a move that doesn't affect the Pokemon you swap into. I usually pull strategies like this off in older games like Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, but it actually works in Black and White. It just takes forever to do this. But the payoff is pretty massive, as I'm about to show you, because once we get rid of all of Cofagrigus' moves, we can then swap in Excadrill. And with Excadrill, we don't even have to rely on Substitute. We have Swords Dance for attack buff, we have Sandstorm for speed buff, and don't forget, the Cofagrigus is going to be able to heal with Full Restore, which not only wastes a Full Restore, but it actually gives me more turns to set up because Struggle takes away 1/4 of its total HP unless it's not divisible by 4, which it's not. So I Earthquake and knock out Cofagrigus. We needed Brick Break because Hydreigon levitates, so we knock that out. Next comes out Bouffalont, thankfully not the Electrost. I don't know if I one-shot that. We do one-shot Bouffalont. We then one-shot Seismitoad. This is a problem. The AI doesn't recognize that Electros is actually good because it levitates. It does survive and knocks me out with Flamethrower. I'll be honest, I had no idea what order these Pokemon would come out in, and this was extremely favorable. We outspeed and go for Retaliate. Unfortunately, with the Sandstorm, we no longer have Sturdy, but Bisharp goes for Night Slash. We're double super effective, and that's GG. We have beaten Pokemon Black with no experience points, with some pretty underleveled Pokemon, to be completely honest with you. Now, typically this is when the video should end because the credits have rolled, and although in a lot of games you can battle the Elite Four again, I typically don't show those battles because it's post-game. There's no credit sequence. But in Black and White, you don't fight the champion on the original Elite Four run. You only fight the champion afterwards. And while I could just skip to that battle, because the post-game in Black and White, at least in terms of the amount of Pokemon available and routes that open up, is massive, my team is going to be substantially different than the one you saw. I spent hours of real time setting up this new team. But as a trade-off, while I'm going to get some really cool new Pokemon, I decided I wasn't going to save between Elite Four members, so I had to beat them all in a row, and here's how that went. Now, as we battle Marshall, I'm going to tell you there was a lot of testing that went into this to make this consistent, and I'm really proud of how it turned out, because which Pokemon to use, which order to use them in, which order to do the Elite Four, all of that was stuff I had to determine. Now, ideally, I wanted to bait Breloom into doing a different move. It went for Sky Uppercut, so I just knock it out with Flamethrower, which is a TM you can get. Volcarona, you'll see, it's level 70. You can catch it in Relic Castle. You also see I have a Bisharp. You can just catch a level 60 Bisharp in Dark Grass, and Bisharp's role is to tank an attack and use Rocky Helmet to break Sturdy. Now we have a level 61 Gliscor. Stone Edge doesn't do all that much, and Acrobatics without an item does 110 base power by Sock. Next comes out Conkeldurr. It's at level 73. Acrobatics doesn't even do half. Stone Edge, though, doesn't knock it out. We could have gone for Swords Dance. I decided to go for Earthquake because I don't want it to heal. It goes for Payback. But don't forget, we have a super good Pokemon still to be used, Volcarona. And it really is the linchpin. There are very few games in which a non-legendary Pokemon is available as a static encounter late in the game. I think Volcarona is one of the first, if not one of the only encounters of this type. And it's really lucky for me. Volcarona is both one of my favorite Pokemon and an extremely good Pokemon. I should also mention that Marshall was the least consistent of the Elite Four members, which is why I opted to battle him first, because might as well go with the guy you lose most to, as opposed to one you beat pretty consistently and then have to redo 3 battles. Now, we get pretty lucky in that we get a high jump kick miss, but it wouldn't have mattered, we would have tanked it. We used rare candies to get Metagross. You can catch a Metang right around where you can catch the Kyurem, and Metagross is at a pretty high level, level 66, and with that agility plus Zen Headbutt, it sweeps through the rest of Marshall's team, no problem. The other 3 members of the Elite Four I could beat rather consistently at this point. Chantal we actually lead with Bisharp, and you've seen the strategy before. I go for Substitute, and I have leftovers. It almost always goes for Will-O-Wisp first, but it can go for Shadow Ball or Energy Ball, which have a pretty high chance not to break Substitute. They can though. I think it's a 70% chance not to break it if I recalled correctly. And you can see eventually it doesn't break it. We're able to set up 2 Swords Dances, and this is a pretty common strategy I want. Just get a sweep. It goes for Will-O-Wisp. The AI doesn't really know what to do when it comes to substitute, and rather than get greedy and go for a 3rd Swords Dance, I know I'm able to knock out most things if I just use 2, so I'm able to knock out Koffagrigus. Golurk, unfortunately, we don't outspeed, but since we're behind a substitute, we knock it out. Next Pokemon to come out, and we've gained a little bit more HP back, is Chandelure. Again, I know I won't outspeed it, and this time I'm not going to sacrifice. I'm going to go into Houndoom, which has Flash Fire. It is extremely low level, but it does know Foul Play, which since I'm at a low level does a little bit more than its actual attacking moves. It gets knocked out by Chandelure, but that's okay, because we can now swap in Clefable. Clefairy is available very late at a very high level with Moonstone, and we have Quick Claw, and now we're just going to set up some Calm Minds here. Fire Blast hits, but once Calm Mind is up, it still does a ton. And it then knocks me out. Alright, well, that was actually a really high roll, and that was not supposed to happen. But it's okay. It's running out of Fire Blasts. Gliscor can actually not tank one. This is not going well. Usually this goes way better. But don't you guys worry, I had a backup plan because it's out of Fire Blasts. I was keeping count. And that's why I didn't send Volcarona in until this point. I can now set up as many Quiver Dances as I want, and even though it very much resists my moves, I can still, with all these Quiver Dances, gain so much special attack and special defense that I can knock out Chandelure, I can knock out Jellicent, although it takes 2 hits, but since I'm behind a substitute, even if Hydro Pump would have hit and critted, it wouldn't have been enough, and so Volcarona is able to take out the rest of the team, still behind substitute, and that's good. Not the ideal strategy, a couple things went wrong there, some bad ranges, but hey, I had a backup. These are in decreasing order of difficulty, so Grimsley is the second easiest, and it leads with Sharpedo. Clefable can get Thunderbolt, and when you get Rocky Helmet plus Thunderbolt, it is enough to typically knock out Sharpedo. The critical hit did matter, and I'm altering my plans a little bit because Clefable is actually not supposed to be here right now, and that's why I'm thinking about what do I really want to do next. I'm going to send out Gliscor, which is who I actually want out. Scrafty doesn't have a great matchup against it. I just go for Acrobatics without a Swords Dance, goes for Head Smash, which is a super powerful rock move, and I'm going to be able to knock out Scrafty, which can be pretty scary. Crocodile gets Intimidate off. I don't have Hyper Cutter, unfortunately. I can now swap into... I think Clefable is kind of the most useless, but I realize I actually don't need Gliscor anymore, so I'm just going to go for X-Scissor and wait for... Oh, that's interesting. It went for Outrage. Okay, that gives me an idea. Because it went for Outrage, I can actually swap into Metagross. So I'm kind of doing this on the fly. This isn't the ideal strategy, but remember, we have Agility, and even though we don't have the best matchup, we do, in fact, have Meteor Mash, which is a super strong move. Shouldn't be enough to knock out Crocodile, unless I get a critical hit. And now Drapion comes out. I go for Meteor Mash. This thing has very good defense. Although I get an attack raise, that's pretty good. Fire Fang doesn't burn, and that's going to be a 2-shot. Very, very good luck here. Liepard comes out next. You should also recall that in Generation 5, Steel resists Dark. That makes Metagross way more viable than it otherwise would be. And against Bisharp, I don't have Brick Break on this thing because I really didn't intend on using it here. What I intended on doing was actually Houndoom will do the trick pretty much. I can just use Flamethrower and I'll outspeed even though I'm almost 20 levels lower. Pretty good. And just like that, we've made it to the champion because I found out Caitlyn was an auto win, which is really, really sad. It likes to go for Hypnosis, and now I can just set up Quiver Dance. Kind of annoyingly, her AI just wants to spam Hypnosis, so I can set up all the Quiver Dances and just quickly sweep through Caitlyn's entire team. Very anticlimactic, but that's why I saved her for last, because I knew that I would win every single time. So now we have to face Alder. This was not my first time facing Alder. I have faced him before, and because of that, I kind of was very convinced I could win, And so I don't even bother saving versus the hardest trainer in Black and White. Am I right to be this cocky? Let's see. So Excelgor leads off and goes for Bug Buzz, which I knew it would do. I go for Quiver Dance. I have Leftovers equipped. Eventually, I'm going to actually start to out-heal the damage he does. So we're just going to set up as many Quiver Dances as possible, and then I'm going to use Substitute. Now, in modern Pokemon, Bug Buzz would go through a Substitute, although that critical hit was really annoying. But as I was saying, the strategy only works in Generation 5, where sound moves don't bypass Substitute. We're going to set up a few more Quiver Dances. We get a little bit more unlucky with Bug Buzzes knocking out my Substitute a little quicker than I'd like. But thankfully, our bad luck ends. We're able to set up all the Quiver Dances, and then we can hopefully sweep. Flamethrower knocks out Excelgor. The next Pokemon to come out is going to be Bouffalant. Bouffalant is very, very bulky, but like, this is a +6 Volcarona behind a Substitute. Escavalier, I mean, you knew that was going to happen. Volcarona is actually pretty scary. It's 7 levels higher. It also doesn't have 6 Quiver Dances. Next comes out Druddigon. I have Bug Buzz. Next comes out Vanillix. And, oh, that's it. Well, that feels pretty anticlimactic. I mean, I spent all this time, and it was really cool we could beat every trainer without saving in a no experience challenge. But surely this is not the most difficult Black and White gets. Wait, why is there more video? Oh no. I would play her theme if it wasn't copyrighted, but Cynthia is available to battle. And like Steven, she doesn't trigger the credits, but like, come on, that's not going to be our final battle. Let's get a much more difficult battle and face a much improved Cynthia team. Alright, so I regret to inform you that I kind of figured out by looking at her movesets, Cynthia could probably also be cheesed. I'm sorry! I can use Substitute from Clefable and then set up Calm Minds, because if you look at Spiritom's moveset, the only attacking moves it has are Sucker Punch, which only has 5 power points, and Shadow Ball, which can't hit a normal Pokemon, which remember, no Fairy type, Clefable is. So we can set up a bunch of Calm Minds, and then yes, it uses Double Team, which makes this very, very, very irritating, but eventually you will knock out Spiritomb, and as long as you made sure it used up all 5 of the Sucker Punches, which it didn't in my first battle, and you can see I also have Magic Guard, so I can't be statused. Pretty good stuff. Lucario is going to break the Substitute, but I'm then going to break Lucario. Next comes out Milotic, which is a special attacker. Now, unfortunately, because of how I was prioritizing my move slots, I opted not to carry Thunderbolt and instead to carry Flamethrower and Ice Beam. This made Milotic really, really, really irritating, and it became a really obnoxious game of chicken who was going to faint first. But in the end, it was in fact Milotic, and with 3 Ice Beams remaining, Braviary breaks my Substitute, but I knock it out with Ice Beam. Next comes out Garchomp, which is why I had Ice Beam. Unfortunately for me, Garchomp does outspeed me and knock me out, but we have another Pokemon I didn't use for the Elite Four, but I plan to, my Mamoswine. It goes for Dragon Rush, which does a lot of damage, but I have Rocky Helmet, I have Ice Beam, and even though Mamoswine is typically a physical attacking Pokemon, with Rocky Helmet, Ice Beam was enough to knock out Garchomp, and now there's just one Pokemon remaining, Electros. I send out Gliscor, which can't be affected by its electric type attacks. I go for Swords Dance. It goes for Flamethrower, which is a special attack. So that's going to do a ton to me, but X-Scissor, actually didn't do so much. You know what, Gliscor, that was kind of useless. This is actually a little bit scary. Next, I'm going to send out Bisharp. Remember, it has Flamethrower, and so, yeah, that pretty much went the way I thought it would, but hey, was worth a try. Next, I'm going to send out Metagross. Again, I know it has Flamethrower, and I don't really have a great move other than Zen Headbutt. Thankfully, it doesn't burn, and I do survive. I go for Agility, then I hit with Zen Headbutt, and I get a flinch. And as long as I hit, that is Cynthia. That is it. We have beaten every single trainer of note in Pokemon Black and White with no experience. There is Morimoto in Castelia City, which I'm going to battle now. Spoiler alert, I used Quiver Dance and win, and it was really easy. But that's it for this video. I really enjoy making videos like this, so if you liked it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what game you'd like me to play without experience. I'm going to tell you right now, Black 2 Challenge Mode or White 2 Challenge Mode sounds incredibly interesting, but I'm definitely down for suggestions. Once again, huge thank you to Atlas and Persona 3 Reload. That game looks really sick, and I can't wait to check it out. That means I'm going to have to get more videos out sooner rather than later, so I'll see you guys really, really soon. Take care.